Welcome to the podcast. Today is June 20th, and what a day in the province it is today. The Doug Ford government made one heck of a lot of changes to his cabinet. The second one, but this one is pretty much unprecedented about how many people got shifted around. We're looking at an entirely new government almost. He had to shift people around early on when he formed the government because some of his ministers ended up with conflicts of interest and whatnot, and people had to get shifted around. But this government has been rushing in blindly, making decisions, and then they're sitting there scratching their heads as to why people are physically protesting them. They just don't seem to get it, don't seem to understand. Look what happened when Doug Ford showed up at the Raptors celebration. He got booed relentlessly. And apparently, from what I've heard from others, that the microphones didn't pick up what actually the volume and the intensity of the booing for Mr. Ford. So I guess he figured he's gonna shuffle things around. Usually, governments shuffle ministers around approaching an election. Creates a little bit of confusion, gets people to forget who did what, and you got new names. And you're not sure, and you forget what some of these ministers have done because now you got new names in here. But very, very, very quickly in a very short list, like over the last year, Doug Ford has told public sector workers your wages will be capped at 1%. Because we all know it's the worker, not the bozo that got elected, or the bozos that have been elected over time, that have set the province on the path that it's at. At one point, the head of GM, Mary Barra, blamed the unions. Oh, we're shutting down production facilities because of the union. So it's the worker standing on the line turning the wrench. It's their fault. The part they're putting on the car is the cheapest piece of junk you can get your hands on. It's the worker that saved, $1 a car? And put those faulty ignition switches on. So now here we go. We got governments coming in, and sure, let's blame the worker. Jason Kenney from the United Conservative Party in Alberta today, in my opinion, just declared outright war against public sector workers. There may even be clawbacks in salaries. This is one of those things that's penny smart, pound wide. Dollar stupid. All right, you cut my wage back. 2-3 months goes by. My bills start piling up. Well, I guess we're not going to go out and have that dinner at the restaurant like we were planning on doing. And then others are going to be in the same boat. Now all of a sudden the restaurant's business slows down. Now they're going to lay off a server or a bartender or a manager. Now you got more people out of work. So you're going to save money here, today, right now, tomorrow. Yes, look, I capped the wages, or I cut the wages back. Look how much I saved. But then in the end, in a couple of months, when the economy starts getting put under pressure, everybody forgets. They tend not to link the two together. We got Ford government that cut all legal aid for refugees and cut 30% from legal aid in general. Okay? You can come at me with many arguments of we shouldn't be letting people out on bail. Well, yeah, we should. Depends on what they're being charged with. Something just over a minor offense. Okay, do we lock them up? Do we throw them behind jail? Do we pay thousands of dollars to keep that person behind jail? Behind bars? Or do we let them go out? You put a bail on, they come back, and they have their hearings. And who's going to get affected by this 30% reduction in legal aid? Do you think the privileged are going to get affected by it? Or do you think the poor are going to get affected by this? And who's going to end up behind bars? Whose lives are going to get ruined or potentially ruined for what? Something minor? You got Ford also canceled rent controls for new buildings. Again, who's that going to hurt? Now the underprivileged, now the poor are going to have to live further maybe from their jobs. Are going to have to commute further. That's going to give them an extra expense instead of being able to live closer. We can't just blame the worker. We can't just go to war against the unions and blame the workers. Now, so we reshuffled the government, okay? One of the early things that Doug Ford did was he came to power and he instantly went to war with Toronto. And he rammed down, no, you got to cut your councillors down in half or whatever the number was. And he misused the spirit of the notwithstanding clause. I don't care about democracy. You do what I'm telling you to do. You do what I want you to do. And he rammed it down. And he put notwithstanding directly into the legislation, which he's also apparently, I believe, done with the ripping up the beer store contract, where he's also trying to shield the government from being sued. So his government wants to run above the law. No, we don't answer the law. You answer us. But yet, at the end of the day today, Ford's cabinet went from 21 ministers to 28 ministers. You just forced Toronto to cut down their representation, and here you are increasing your representation. And I don't have the exact title, but one of these new ministers coming in has the job title of red tape cutter. The minister of the red tape cutting, which is almost ironically pathetic because Ford posted himself at a steel mill and he's walking around with safety equipment on. Well, what do you think regulations are for? What do you think red tape is for? Because the province or the country says when you're in this type of situation, you have to have your hard hat, you have to have your safety equipment on. So we got a whole bunch of changes coming. Of course, they ain't going to be sitting until October. End of October, actually. So let me put it to you this way. I'm working on a farm. I'm standing behind a cow, and I'm shoveling what's coming out of that thing. Owner comes by and says, here's your brand spanking new shovel. Thank you very much. Doesn't change what I'm shoveling. Just because I changed the shovel doesn't mean I changed what I'm shoveling. You got nothing but cuts from this government. This is going to put a huge strain on the economy. Shifting people around, giving them new titles, making up new titles isn't going to work. Ford's been booed relentlessly already, and it's just not getting through his thick head. Of course, the man's born into a life of privilege. His father was an MPP, so he's got his connections from there. The business was handed over to him. He doesn't know what it's like to have a regular job. He doesn't know what it's like to struggle from bill to bill. He doesn't know what it's like to possibly be going in on a Monday or a Friday and getting told, go home, or your wages being cut, or your benefits are being cut, or your 2 days off are being cut. He doesn't care. He has no idea what it's like to be an actual worker, to struggle and to try and get by. Well, we're going to see what happens. And if you take a look at what Andrew Scheer and the federal conservatives, I mean, it's the same message. They're clutching their pearls. Oh, your taxes, I'm going to save your taxes. Yeah, you cut taxes on corporations, guess where that money's going to come out of? It's going to come straight out of the workers and the poor. And like here with Ontario, when you're cutting stuff like legal aid, rent control, 2 days off for workers, you're cutting funding for women's violence shelters, you're cutting $100 million or more out of school repair funds. There's another perfect example. I'm going to save a couple of bucks today, and when these schools really start falling apart, I won't be in office. Then I can sit back and say, well, look, those guys have to spend $500 million now. So shuffling people around, it's going to create some confusion. But like I said, I'm still shoveling the same stuff just because it's a different shovel. Thank you for coming by the podcast. Let me know what you think.